Welcome back for another video. I'm delighted to be joined by two legends of FPL, Ross and Harry. We've got a fun video lined up. We're going to be looking at their updated FPL teams. We're going to rank the premiums and we're going to answer some of your questions. And then we'll finish up looking at my updated draft myself. So, welcome, gents. How are we?
Yeah, good. Thank you, mate. If you're wondering why we're all laughing at this point, it's because that was about the fifth take trying to get that intro. But we are doing well, and this should be a good video.
How has it taken 5 takes to do the intro? Honestly, we're losing it. All right. Anyway, yeah, Harry, how are you?
Yeah, good. We might be here for a while the way things have started, but we did this video before on my channel and it was a lot of fun. So yeah, good to be doing it for the new season.
Yeah, well, we've got further with this recording than the last five, so I think we'll be okay from here on. Links to both Ross and Harry's channels down in the description. In fact, Ross, you've got an announcement, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, announced as of today, so this was very good timing. But I've started an FPL podcast for this season called FPL Therapy. So I won't talk about it too much, but it's an in-studio podcast once a week. I'll be joined by different guests every week, including the two lovely men you can see on your screen very soon. And yeah, please do consider following it. And I'm sure Oscar will drop a link in the description.
Yeah, a link below to that, and obviously Harry's channel. Yeah, and as he says, me and Harry both going to be going on there, so look forward to seeing that. Looks
Yeah.
class. He sent us a few clips and he did like a test recording. So yeah, I can't wait to see that once the season's underway. So we're going to look at your updated FPL drafts, and there's a bit of variance between them. So we'll start with Harry's. So let's pull up Harry's team. He has got Sanchez in goal. He's got Mikalenko, Robertson, and Byrne as his back three. He's gone Eze, Foden, Salah, Gordon, and Watkins, Isak, and Wood. So it's quite a template. He's gone Salah captain, and he's got Turner on his bench, Vardy and Kunku, and Harwood Bellis. So yeah, talk us through your team, Harry.
Yeah, so I had Haaland in my first draft and he has since left, but I'm still toying with the fact that I do want him. There are a couple of things which I can see you all laughing at, but like Sanchez and Turner at the moment, I know I'm going to have a 4.5 and a 4.0, so I will let that decision be made closer to the start of the season. Sanchez predicted to be Chelsea's number one, but we may well sign another goalkeeper who'll probably come in at 4.5 anyway. I quite fancy the Forest keeper, Carlos Miguel, if we get notes that he's going to start. Turner at the moment, I mean, we have no 4.0 goalkeeper. It might be Vlad Arson of Brentford. I think there's a chance he places Pickford, but replaces Flecken, sorry. But generally, the keepers are a bit dull at the moment, so I don't have that much to talk about there. Yeah, so Eze, Foden, Salah, Gordon, I really like. I feel like Gordon has great opening fixtures. Eze, if he stays, that's the big thing, right? He's linked heavily with City at the moment. So if he stays, I think he's really nice. My only concern with Palace is no Elise. Yes, they've made signings, and Mateta is expected to miss the start of the season. So it's kind of a back and forth of whether that makes them rely more on Eze or it make it easier for them to stop Eze because he's their main threat. So at the moment he's in, just because I think 7 mil is a great price. And then, yeah, Foden to cover Haaland a little bit, Salah for captaincy, then Watkins, Isak feel like great picks. And I've gone with Chris Wood at the moment. The other one I quite like up there is Muniz of Fulham. I think people are put off by the fact they play United in the opening day, but after that, the fixtures are really good for him. But yeah, and then, yeah, 2 rotating 4.5s. I think a lot of people are doing that.
What do you think, Ross? Shall I
Oh,
go?
where do I begin? Absolute stinker. No, as much as I love to roast Harry, I think it is a very solid draft. You
Yeah.
can't really fault the front seven or the 7 attackers, and I think Gvardiol's a fantastic pick. I suppose where I would pull up this draft is maybe a couple of spots. Harry's already spoken about the goalkeepers. We'll all probably choose the 4.5 that looks the best at the start of the season, but I'm a little bit unsure about Burns still, just because I don't know, is he going to play centre back? Is he going to play left back? Will it be Lloyd Kelly at centre back and him at left back? Or will he play centre back with Lewis Hall at left back? Or it could be, if, for example, Kelly at centre back, Hall at left back, and the Livramento at right back, and Burn might not start every game. So I do expect him to start, but I'm a bit worried. And he's actually, I think, the most highly owned 4.5 defender.
Yeah, he is.
And then Robertson, I'm just a bit unsure. Basically, in Arnie slot system, he plays a 4 at the back, but Trent will invert into midfield, and Robertson will essentially play as a left centre back. Now, that might mean he's slightly better for bonus. He will obviously still keep the clean sheets as well. He might still be on set pieces. But if he's playing left centre back, I don't know why Arnie slot wouldn't just play Joe Gomez. So I do worry about Andy Robertson's minutes. So I think that the back line is probably the position where I'm least confident with that draft. And also, I cannot believe a Chelsea fan doesn't have Cole Palmer. I'd hate to watch my team every week if I was a Chelsea fan and not have Cole Palmer. So I'm surprised Harry, and we'll discuss that a bit later, doesn't have Cole Palmer in this draft.
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah,
make the same point. I mean, I've got Trent in my draft personally, but yeah, you can save 1 million on Robertson. So it just depends on the combinations. Trent and a 5.5 mid instead of Nkunku, or Robertson and Nkunku. So yeah, it's interesting, by the way. You've benched Vardiel and Nkunku. Is that just purely you fancy? I mean, you have to start Mikalenko. You fancy Burn to be
yeah.
better game week 1 over Vardiel, or is that a bit of bias against Chelsea there?
Probably a little bit. It could get to the point where I don't have someone like Burn because I feel like I want to play Gvardiol. If I've got Burn at home Southampton on the opening day, I feel like I'm forced to bench Gvardiol because for me Mikalenko is by far the best 4.5. Like we haven't massively
Yeah.
spoken about him, but the fact that like Branthwaite and Tarkowski have come in at 5 and they've left Mikalenko at 4.5, I was
And by the
quite
way,
surprised at.
Mikalenko more points per match last season than the centre backs.
Yeah.
I would just say be very careful. There are very strong rumours of Mikalenko leaving for several teams in Europe, especially Napoli. Apparently, there's quite a few teams that want him. So the concern that we have is actually, obviously, and this always happens, game week 1 deadline is during the transfer window. So it could be that you're like, oh, Mikalenko's still playing for Everton, and 2 weeks later he's gone. But I think, as Harry says, it's probably worth the risk because he's just such a standout option with clean sheet potential and a bit of attacking threat.
The other
I mean,
defender I'm keeping an eye on in terms of transfers, like if Trippier leaves, Liverpool's going to be the most obvious 4.5 by a mile.
Definitely.
Like he'll be an absolute lock. He's been linked. There's rumours about the Saudi league buying him, but yeah, we'll have to see. Sorry, Harry.
There's been a lot of links for Trippier. It sounds like it's going to happen at some point. So Burn could easily become Livramento, and then Mikalenko, if he stays, is got to be in there. But yeah, if something happens, then we'll have a look. The only other thing that I wonder about this is you say I've got no Palmer in there. Nkunku scored last night in the preseason friendly or early this morning. Looked pretty good. I think he's such good value at 6.5 that I find I could own him and Palmer, but I don't think I'm going to go without Nkunku. Now, I could do something like Eze and Gordon to like a Saka and a 4.5. That is better for my starting 11. It's slightly weaker for the bench. I can't quite stretch to Palmer. So that's the type of decision that I'm really looking at midfield. Do I want the front 8 that I've got, or do I combine 2 of them to get like another like premium mid? Yeah, like Eze and Gordon, I could just get Saka and just start Nkunku every week. So that's the thing about the front 8 that I'm not fully decided on. I just quite like some of those mid-price mids. I think they're better value at the moment.
You know what?
That is the other concern. Sorry, go on, mate.
No, I was going to say, with such a strong bench, like there's potential as well for you not to need to make transfers urgently in opening weeks. And you can end up in a position where, I don't know if you're intentionally doing this or you're going to aim to, but you could end up rolling 3-4 transfers just purely because you've got so much depth on your bench there. And imagine if you need to pull an early wildcard, game week 5, 6, and you've got like 4 transfers in the bank on top of the wildcard. Like that'd be such a strong position to be in.
That I was actually going to say almost the opposite point would be my issue, though, is this team's so well set up for the long term that you might not need to, apart from there are 0 Arsenal. And I know there are various, like it might be you can switch Foden and Gordon to Saka and someone else, for example, and you could do Robertson to Saliba in game week 3 or 4 if you wanted to, but then that is booking in transfers. And I mean, we'll discuss throughout pre-season that the fact that you can roll up to 5 transfers now means that if you start the season really well and you don't need transfers, others will be scrambling, making the transfers to get to your team. If you're in a position by game week 5 or 6 where you've rolled so many transfers and you've got all the good players. So that's why when we move on to my draft, I've got Arsenal in there now because no, their opening fixtures aren't great, but you're going to want them very soon. And I just think it's probably best to start with at least one Arsenal. But I mean, it's a great draft. I'd give it a solid 3 out of 10, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll probably go 3.5. But yeah, not bad, Harry. Well done. Yeah, okay. Well, on that note, let's move on. We're going to rank the premiums because this season we're kind of spoiled for choice. We've got Haaland, Salah, Palmer, Saka, Son, Foden, and KDB. So yeah, I thought it'd be a good idea to rank the premiums in order of how likely you are to own them as an FPL asset. So those are the 7 players: Haaland, Salah, Palmer, Saka, Son, Foden, and KDB. So start with you, Harry. What would be your ranking number 1 to number 7?
Yeah, so I got Salah top at the moment, just based on opening fixtures, and I'm needing a captain from him. I've got Foden second. Now, Foden versus someone like Palmer, Saka, Son, I think it's very close. But the reason I've got Foden second is because I've got Haaland now quite far down that list. So as a result, I want a little bit of that City cover. So Foden gets boosted a little bit. Then I've got Palmer. I've actually at the moment got Son above Saka, but it does sound like Spurs are going to sign a forward. They're heavily linked with Tony. So as soon as that happens, Son would go probably like almost to the bottom of this list. So at the moment, Son is there. I think he's a bit of a differential. Leicester away on the opening day feels like such a nice differential that you could start the season with. Then it's Saka, very close. Then it's Haaland, just based on his price. And I think De Bruyne is, if he finds form and he's fully fit, then maybe. But as soon as Champions League starts again, I can't see anyone picking a De Bruyne over the rest of the players we've got.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, Foden was pretty much nailed for most games. For me, still a bit of a question mark. Like if he's definitely going to start game week 1. Like, I think someone like Saka definitely starts for Arteta, but someone like Foden, you know what Pep's like. I'm not totally convinced unless he comes out and says something like what Arteta said the other day, where he basically said, "Yeah, those that had a deep run in the Euros, I don't see any reason why they won't be involved in the first game week." So yeah, like Saliba, Riot obviously, but he barely played, and Saka. Yeah, interesting order. Ross, what's your order looking like?
I mean, very, very similar. So we've both got Salah in first, and we've both got Haaland 6th, KDB 7th. I think the big difference probably is Palmer and Saka for the two of us. So I've got Palmer in 2nd after Salah, whereas Harry obviously has him in 3rd. So I've had Palmer in every single draft that I've created so far. I've kind of decided that Salah and Palmer are non-negotiable for me. I might change that, but Palmer just feels like I'm glad that people are having to make that decision. Like, I'm glad that such a good manager like Harry sat there and thinking, I might not go with Palmer. That tells me that they have priced Palmer perfectly. Because if every good manager had Palmer, then they've not. So I'm really happy about that. And it makes me want him more because he's priced so highly, because it will put so many people off. And even if you strip back the penalties, he was sensational last season. So I do think Nkunku's great. I just think Palmer's different gravy. And I think for FPL specifically, he's going to be good again. So I've got Palmer in 2nd. And then I just rate Saka a little bit higher on this list than Harry. So I've got Saka in 3rd, whereas obviously Harry had him in 5th. So I just think Saka's so consistent. And as you say, if Saka came back with one leg from the Euros, he'd still start in game week 1, whereas I'm just not so sure if that's the situation for other players. So yeah, my list is Salah, Palmer, Saka, Foden, Son, Haaland, KDB. But I think we largely agree. It's just, you've just got to take your pick between Foden, Saka, and Palmer, really.
Interesting that you don't put Son, like you don't have any thought for him. I know like there's lots of rumors about Tony joining, but if they didn't do it, if their squad stayed the same, like my only thought process with Son is a lot of us, we picked him last year when he was the same price and everyone else was 2 mil, 3 mil cheaper than him. And now he's the same and everyone is now at the same price as him. So in my mind, I'm like, well, surely that makes Son actually decent value. Now, if of course a transfer happens, then it goes out the window. But feels like he's a little bit underlooked. And of course, he's had the time off over the summer, which none of those other mids have had.
I absolutely agree. I think it's the Spurs factor and the unknown also with Spurs as well. The way they ended last season made Manchester United look good at points. So I'm just a bit worried. And I also just don't know how that front three, is it Brennan Johnson? Is it Kulusevski? Is it Son through the middle on the left? So I agree. If we get confirmation it's Sonny on pens, they don't sign a number 9, it looks like he might start through the middle.
Yeah.
Then obviously comes into the question. He might even go higher than Foden, but I'm kind of set on Salah, Palmer, Saka in that order. And as you'll see in my draft a bit later, those are my 3 premiums that I think are worth having.
You know what? It might be Arsenal bias, but I'm coming around to Saka, and my latest draft has actually got Saka and not Palmer. But I actually think they'll probably do similarly over the opening 5 or so game weeks, and then it just comes down to the 0.5 and where that goes. So, yeah, at the moment I've actually got Saka now in ahead of Palmer, but yeah, you look at Chelsea's fixtures and it's pretty frightening after City, and even the City game last season, like you scored. Yeah, I can't remember what the score was at Stamford Bridge, but Palmer scored against City in the same fixture last season, and then that was the 4, wasn't it? Yeah, and then they've got Wolves, Palace, Bournemouth, West Ham, Brighton, Forest. I mean, it's the sort of run where Palmer could fly. So yeah, it's scary going without. But yeah, I think as you basically said at the start there, they've nailed the price in this season.
Yeah, I know this is such an obvious cliche thing to say, but I would rather start with Palmer and then if Nkunku's flying, go to Nkunku. I know you can say that about any player, but if I started with Nkunku and he was playing 70 minutes, looked a bit rusty, and Palmer's smacking in goals, that's a painful one to take. And that's almost wildcard territory at that stage to try and shift the money back into a 10.5 Palmer. Oscar, I had a question for you as an Arsenal fan then. I've been thinking this a lot. I'd love to save 2 million on Saka and go for Ødegaard. Is there any way that you can convince me that Ødegaard is still good value for £2 million cheaper? Because that 2 million is huge. I mean, that's the difference between almost like going up from Wood to Havertz or something like that. That's a big chunk of change. So Is Odegaard an option, or is it just Saka for the pens and minutes?
100%. He's been in a few of my drafts. Yeah, that 1.5 can go a long way. I think he's absolutely viable. I look at his last couple of seasons. Was it 186? Yeah, and then 212 the season before. Very consistent numbers: 17.7 XGI, 17.8 the season before. I think he's absolutely an option. You look at Saka's numbers last season; he was a level above. But yeah, I think he's honestly good value for 8.5. Where I'm struggling at that price bracket is Odegaard against Bruno. And I think that's also extremely close. And like you look at their data the last couple of years, it's similar. What are you working at, Harry?
No, it's because I love Bruno.
Yeah.
I know you do.
You're going to set Ross off on Bruno, and we'll be here all afternoon.
I was about to ask you, but that might be a rabbit hole we don't want to go down. But go on. I mean, you haven't got him in your team, have you, Ross? I did look at him. You took him out.
I don't have any Man United players. Yeah, I think Bruno's consistent minutes on penalties. If Man United score goals, he'll be involved. I just think there are so many unknowns about Man United, and the fixtures aren't fantastic. They're not awful, but I would have needed the fixtures to have been absolutely spot on, I think, to start with Bruno. Although don't be surprised if he's in my team come game week 1. But I think for now there are better options where their teams are a little bit more solid and we know exactly how they're going to line up. With Manchester United, I've got no idea who's going to play up top. Is it Xerxes? Is it Højlund? Are we going to play a diamond? Are we going to play more narrow? Is it a 4-3-3? And so I think with all of the unknowns, I think it's probably best to just maybe steer clear. But he is very consistent. He's a bit like Odegaard. It'll hit around 200 points, maybe more, and it'll be super consistent.
See, if I go Saka, then I'll go Bruno, just to spread my risk a bit. And I actually think Fulham home's a great fixture. Like they've sold Palhinha. So, and at the end of last season as well, he's on fire. I think it was game week 26. And I don't know if this is a coincidence, but I think it was around when Casemiro was back. And he got 7 goals, 4 assists in like his last 11 starts. So yeah, if we can catch him in that sort of run of form, and you look at the opening games, Fulham, Brighton, and Southampton in their opening 4, I think he's an awesome pick for 8.5. I'm coming round to the Bruno propaganda.
I just think that Fulham game stinks of 1-0 Fulham. It's Friday night, the first game of the season. That just stinks of an upset. Everyone loads up on like a couple of United players to have a couple of players on the first game, and it's just. Maybe that's just like narrative bias, but I do love Bruno, but I think there might be some slightly better value options.
I'll be at Fantasy Football Fest as well, so there'll be something to cheer on as well. Because otherwise, the game will be on, and I'll have nothing to cheer on.
I'm quite looking forward to going to that and not having something to worry about. Because normally I feel like I always have like double or triple up in that game, and it's the first game of football back, and then I'm also thinking about my FPL team. Whereas now I can cheer Fulham on and hope for a good result.
Okay, let's smash through the premiums then in terms of the defenders. So in order of price, it's Trent, White, Gabriel, Saliba, Robertson, Van Dijk, Vardiol, Trippier, and Porro. So, Harry, we'll go with you again first. How have you ranked the premium defenders this season?
Yeah, so I got Gvardiol in number 1, followed by Robbo. Then it's like the Arsenal centre-backs. I've got Porro, and then I've got Trent. Trent's probably lower down this list than I want. Maybe he should be above Porro, but then White, Van Dijk, and Trippier. Trippier for me is, especially with the others, and the rumours of him going, but even if he stays, just doesn't feel worth the 6. Van Dijk for me as well, compared to the other 6s that we've got, just doesn't feel worth it. And I'm not sure I'd pay the 0.5 on Ben White over the others, given our game week 1 budget. It might be one of the things that when we build up a bit of team value that I try and spend it on White over a Gabriel or a Saliba, but it feels like one of those places early on that I'm not all for. Porro, I think Leicester away, Everton at home in the first 2, and he's one of those that if I had to free up a bit of money and I went down from a Robbo to a Porro, I don't mind that for a 0.5. That's why he's higher up than maybe he is in your list. Trent is the one that's a little bit low down. The reason for that, so I in my original draft had Trent and 3 4.5 defenders, and then I changed it to 1 4.5, Gvardiol and Robbo, and that for me just feels a much better use of my money. It's not that I don't think Trent is a good pick. I just think that million upgrading one of my 4.5s almost to a Gvardiol is a better use of that money than upgrading a Robbo to a Trent, if that makes sense. So I think Trent will do very well, and I think he'll score goals this season. But for game week 1, when budget is tight, I think that's a better use of the money.
And I remember last season you picked up White for that double game week, and he got 26 points or something. But he's way down your list. And then obviously I think you own Gabriel and or Saliba at some point. Is that just the opening fixtures that's putting you off them, despite how good they were last season?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, the thing is with the Arsenal opening fixtures is you look at the first three and you think they're quite good. Two at home, you probably expect at least one clean, probably two clean sheets in the first three for them. But then you look a little bit longer and it's not quite as good. And I really like Vardiol. I think the City fixtures are good. I think if he's continuing to play in the role that he played last year, that's a big caveat, and the minutes are there, then just 6 million still feels like such a good price. I think he should have been 6.5 based on how well he finished last season. Saliba, Gabriel are still really good picks. I think I'll own two of the 6 mil defenders for game week 1. It's just out of Gavardio, Robbo, Saliba, Gabriel, which two it's going to be.
I'm keeping an eye on Calafiori as well, who obviously has just been signed. He can play left back or left centre back. So uh, I think there's a chance he might get rotated at some point with Gabriel. Like, I think might have taken a page out of Pep's book in that respect and rotate that back line a lot. I think Saliba, he's completely nailed. Like, he's faultless. And yeah, he rarely makes a mistake. Gabriel, I think, has the odd mistake in him, but I think he'll start the vast majority of games still. And it was like, yeah, top centre back pairing last season. But that's something at the back of my head as well. But yeah, if you go about them game week 1, you've got the benefit of just waiting to see how that plays out. How about you, Ross? How's your ranking for the premium defenders?
Extremely similar list, other than Trent is in a completely different spot for me. So Trent's number 1, and for me, it's not particularly close. Like, I would almost like separate first with everyone else. So Trent will be in my draft for game week 1, unless we hear that he's a doubt for some reason for game week 1. I just think he's worth it due to the ceiling that he has. And again, a very cliche saying, you start with the most expensive player in a position and you can get anyone with that money. And I know we can't do that because
so Haaland's in your draft, is yours?
As I was going to say, we can't do that with everyone this year because you can't have Salah, Trent, and Haaland, I don't think, without sacrificing elsewhere. So you can't always do that. But if Trent is struggling, Liverpool don't look good under Slot, well, then Saliba's sat there, for example. So Trent for me is just too good. And I think, is it Geertruida? I think it's pronounced, the defender that played in Trent's position last season under Slot. He had 8 goals and 5 assists. And without insulting him, he's not a particularly technical footballer. He's nowhere near as good as Trent, for example, with the ball at his feet. If that kind of defender can get you 13 goals, what can Trent, or 13 goals and assists together, what can Trent get you? So I just think the ceiling's very, very high, and I'm very excited, especially with those opening fixtures. So Trent, for me, has been in every draft for the last week, but so has Gvardiol. And this is where a lot of people will roast my draft at the end. My defense is very expensive, but I just think that Trent and Gvardiol, even for 13 million combined, they're just so good. So Trent and Gvardiol for me are very, very clear. And then after that, you've probably got to say an Arsenal defender of some kind for me would be up there. But that's only for me in addition to Trent and Gvardiol.
Just on the Trent thing, the only thing with that is that part of the system that he plays, his right winger hugs the touchline, and that allows that inverted fullback to get into those central positions, which is why their right back scored so many goals as they did last year. I just wonder a little bit if the fact that that right winger is Salah means that he's not going to invert that much. He's not just going to tell Salah just to go and camp on that right wing all game and give that space.
Yeah. That's isn't the system that Slot plays. So Slot plays with inside forwards. So Slot's formation in a pitch is almost like a box. So he doesn't use the wings. It's a big criticism of Slot's philosophy is that he doesn't. So what Klopp would do in the past is Klopp would use the kind of byline. So he'd use those squares in the corner by the corner flag, and he'd use those spots. Slot almost overcrowds the middle of the pitch. So my understanding from speaking to a couple of people that watch the Eredivisie would be that Slot plays a very narrow formation. So not only would Trent invert, but Salah would also play almost like an inside forward as well. So I do agree with you. That might not work in the Prem. That feels like something that might have worked well for other teams. But if you overcrowd the middle of the pitch in the Prem, especially against tough opposition, you might need that width. So it might be that a couple of games in, we start to see that he needs the width, in which case Trent can't invert. And then I suppose the one thing before we move on is that there is a lot of unknown with Liverpool. And this is maybe one thing that you could say about they're not the best team to load up on, because despite the fixtures and despite how good they are, they've played under Klopp for so many years. Slot's coming in largely unknown as a manager, not had a particularly long career at the top club. So it's going to be interesting. And maybe that is your justification for not having Trent. But I just think the ceiling is so high with him.
Now, that's ultimately, I think, the main criticism with Salah and Trent, obviously. With Haaland, you know exactly what you're going to get. He's had the summer off. I know that applies to Salah as well. But you know what you're going to get with City. Ipswich home game week 2. You could score 5 then. It wouldn't surprise you. But Liverpool, a bit of a question mark, but there is money to be saved there. So, yeah, it's an interesting dilemma. Right, let's move on to the Q&A. Thanks for all the questions, everyone. First question is from OHD. He says, what shampoo do you use, Ross?
Shoe polish.
Shoe polish,
Have you
right?
just got comments which is just ripping us? Is that
I
what
know,
the questions are?
there are multiple egg comments, by the way, in here. That's not the
Yeah.
only one.
Yeah, there was a lot. The Raptor army definitely showed up when I was asking for questions. Let's do an FPL one. How would you describe your FPL experience before and after making content from FPL ASAP? Go for it, Harry.
Um, Before I made content, I basically just played for mini leagues, and I think that's how most people played. Like I started just by playing with my mates, and that's all I cared about. Like I'd make transfers based on what they had in their team, and just completely didn't know that like rank was a thing. And then when I started making content, when that's then become slightly more important, and it's a better way of comparing how you're doing against other people because you can't say, oh, I'm first in 6 mini leagues to, or I'm second in this league, I'm fourth in this league to random people because they're like, what are you talking about? So that's probably it. The shift from like just mini leagues that's how I used to play the game.
How about you, Ross?
Yeah, I'd say it's changed quite a lot. I think the big thing for me is when you say something, when you create content, you feel very inclined to stick with it. And you feel almost like obliged to stick with it as well. And that's something I've noticed. I used to change my opinion a lot more throughout the week before I created content. Whereas now, if on a Monday I jump on and say, this is the best player, I'm like, well, I can't now on a Friday say I don't like them actually, because what if people only watch my Monday video? So I do feel like I'm a little bit more stubborn, which probably isn't great. But the good thing about it is because you have to justify every single decision, because again, as similar to what Harry said, I'm not just going to jump on and say because I like them or because they've got cool hair. Like what you need to give a good justification for a player, right? And I think that means that you don't pick silly picks and you don't pick players just for vibes. You tend to anyway, and I can see Harry laughing because he thinks I don't. But you tend to pick players based on data and the eye test and things like that, not based on just vibes and gut feeling, which for the most part probably makes you a better FPL manager. And I'd say that's mostly why us content creators don't have awful ranks usually, is because we have to justify, we tend to make slightly better picks.
I can relate to the one you said about like being stubborn, and I guess you have to reserve the right to change your mind. I did a video on the 4 mil defenders, and I had Howard Bellis as a good pick, but I also later said he's an avoid because his ownership's so high. Like if Newcastle batter them, his price could fall. So yeah, I think you just have to be willing to take on the criticism if you do change your mind. Interesting one from FPL Daniel. He says, "Do you copy each other?" And he also asks, "Do you advise each other about future moves and chip strategy?" And lastly, he says, "Are you friends in real life, or is this just business?" I'll jump in and do the last part, and I'll say we are actually mates in real life. Like we talk probably every day, all day in our group chat. And Harry's got a pretty well planned out wedding next year after the season finishes, which me and Ross are both going to be at. Is there anything you two wanted to add to that, including the one on copying each other's moves and strategies?
Yeah, I'm really glad you've asked that. So the reason for Harry's success in recent years is actually that he copies me and he asks me for advice. So I've got a special Patreon set up just for Harry, and Harry asked me for advice. So all of Harry's ranks across the previous years are thanks to me.
Massive asterisk, all of those. Yeah.
Anything I've ever achieved is all because of you, Ross.
Thank you, mate. I mean, I'm gonna clip that.
Like if you look at what we do over the course of the season, I think we rarely make the same moves, and even captaincy, I think, is often different, and even chip strategy. So no, I mean we do bounce stuff off each other and discuss picks and that sort of thing. But I'd say we're very different over the course of the season. Yeah. Question from Classy Citizen. He says, "Coffee or tea?" What about you, Harry?
Coffee every day. Easy.
Ross?
Yeah, I'm coffee every day, but like 3 days a year, I just wake up and I'm just like desperate for a cup of tea randomly. But I couldn't drink it every day. I'd get a bit sick of it. But yeah, definitely coffee.
Yeah.
I'm all about tea myself. Move on to the next one. Shreyan, he says, so for context, I've agreed to get the Focal logo tattooed at 200,000 subscribers. So if you're not subscribed, then hit subscribe to be part of some history there. But Ross, you mentioned getting an egg tattoo if you hit that milestone. So Shreyan asks, whereabouts are you getting the tattoo?
Oh, sorry, mate. I can't quite hear you. I think the internet's like cutting out. I guess I feel like it should be on my egg, but then I feel like it's a terrible idea if I get a tattoo on my head.
You can't get it on your head.
I feel like it's got.
You'd let us know even more than you already do.
Someone asked the other day, "Is that hat tattooed on?" And I loved it. Maybe I should get just a tattoo of the hat. That would save me so much time. Anyway, I think it will be somewhere hidden. I haven't consulted with my girlfriend yet. So if anyone in the comments wants to let us know where would just a nice simple egg, maybe with a face, where should I get the egg tattooed? Try and be PG about it.
Maybe you should have a bet with her. Like, if she beats you again this season, then you get the egg tattoo.
She absolutely will. She's just a better manager.
Yeah, she
if you
smashed
beat
it
her,
last year.
she can get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God, can you imagine that? I have to get an egg tattooed on her.
Interesting question from Russell. He says, "Do you think FPL is worse now, with how popular and how template it is compared to how it used to be?"
Yeah, probably. I would say so. I think that's a fair point. And people, you've just got to move with the game. And it's not just the game. There are multiple things in life where you look back and you say, oh, it was better how it used to be. Oh, well, that's not how it used to be. And I think that's the case for like people hating on AI and models. And yeah, I mean, it may have been more fun before that, but that isn't the way it is now. And I think it's the same with content creators and template. You can complain about it all you want, but that is the way that the game is developed now. And if you want to play it, lean into it. Right? Use the models, use the template, use ownership, use all the things to your advantage, and still find a way to have fun with it. And at the end of the day, you don't have to follow the template. If you think that the template is a bad thing, then that should make it easier to go against it. Andy Martin tweeted something the other day, which I thought was brilliant. He was like, I hope all these people copy this model because then it's easier to beat all of them because they have the same team. And that should be the way you're viewing it. If everyone's got a template team, then you go against the template. Well, then you've just beat 2 million managers rather than trying to beat everyone's individual team. So yeah, in all honesty, probably the template does make it a little bit worse and harder, but I also think it offers opportunities as well.
I've got a couple of thoughts in based on what you said there. First of all, I think there's probably always been a template, like every season, purely based on who's the most owned players and so on. Like that is the template every season ever, in a way. I guess it's just more obvious or more widely discussed because of social media. But the other thing, I think what's fun is quite it depends on your opinion. Like some people have more fun using models and projected points and expected data and that sort of thing, whereas some people will see that as bland. I could certainly agree with that if you're just following the top suggested move every week and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's very opinion based. What would you say, Harry? Is FPL worse now, or is it as good as ever?
I think I would agree, right? It's more the fact that you look at other people's teams and that everyone's is the same, and you are fighting one player against another player rather than 5 players against 5 players. But it's not just in FPL that you get a template. It's just not called like a template when you look at other things. When you play video games, when you play Call of Duty, Fortnite, FIFA, like it's called the meta, and that's a much more widely accepted term than template. And people think the meta is the meta way of playing a game is a good thing, and you get it in everything. Eventually, the longer you play something, eventually people will find the way that is more likely to get you the end result that you're looking for. And it's happening in FPL, and it will continue to do so. As Ross said, you can play the game without that. You can pick other players. Depends how you want enjoyment from the game, because at the end of the day, when you're playing Call of Duty, you're playing Fortnite or FIFA, there are tactics, there are guns that or whatever that will give you a better chance of doing well. And it's the same in FPL, but you can play it in other ways if you wanted to, depending on like what your goal is with it. So I'd say a little bit. There's, when you look at everyone's teams and everyone's got 8 or 9 players the same, it's not quite as exciting, but it's a little bit more of a strategy based approach to it now than it used to be.
I just remembered Live FPL launched a really cool tool last season where you could enter your ID and see how many teams are identical in the top million. And it was surprisingly low. Like, there were quite a few weeks where I entered mine and I had no teams in common, or sometimes it'd be like 10. So yeah, I don't think it's as bad as some people might make out. Well, I've got a question for you, Ross. What's your favorite memory as an FPL content creator so far? That one's from No FPL.
That's an interesting one. I think for most of us, our favorite memory will be in terms of the content we create or a milestone we've hit. Because as much as we love FPL, it comes the genuinely the joy that we get is from delivering a video that performs well, or delivering a video that delivers value to you guys. So I think all 3 of us would probably say hitting a milestone or a specific video. But I mean, outside of that, I'd have to say, because it's the highest I've ever been, was when I got up to 99th. And I think that was especially good for me because it was quite rare. Again, I don't normally go that high, but it was also so good because it was due to a couple of different picks. And I remind myself of that when I am struggling and I'm not got a good rank and I'm sat with a team the same as everyone else, to have some fun with it. Because I didn't start that season expecting to do very well. And so I remind myself of that all the time, because it's like, that's if you want to do very well in FPL, and by very well I mean sort of top 100, you've got to have an extremely unique team. Like if you look at all the past winners, Oscar always interviews them every season. They've always got some weeks I'm like, that is an awful team, or that's a crazy team, or I wouldn't have picked that player, and that's how you do well. So that's my favorite memory because it reminds me how I'd like to play the game from now on, and hopefully I'll stick to that a little bit this season. By if I think a player is good, just have them. It doesn't have to be the same as everyone else.
And that's the trick, really, to breaking up to those crazy ranks, like finding the right time to break away from the 10 player, which we talked about earlier. Like I remember, what was his name? Surname Piggott, that won it a few years ago. Jamie Piggott. Yeah, sorry, Jamie. He went De Bruyne rather than Salah for like the last 10 game weeks, which was, that was the season Salah was on fire, but then he tailed off at the end of that season. And then De Bruyne got that insane score in the double game week. That sort of thing. You go against the crowd at the right time, and that's what sends you up the ranks. Harry, but how about you then? What's your favorite memory as an FPL content creator?
Yeah, as I think Ross alluded to, like the moment of hitting like 100k subscribers for me is like the pinnacle. And I think it happened for you guys as well, that it happened live on stream as well. Like the live streams are the best part of the content. Like I love Saturday mornings, 2 hours of streams with everyone asking questions and the deadline and everything. The streams are by far the best bit. So to combine that with the sort of milestone that when you start, you sort of see out in the distance and you see in the sort of far off that you might hit. And eventually one day you start to get closer and closer. To do that at the same time as being live was just by far the best thing.
Well, I was asleep when I hit 100, but hopefully I'll be awake for 200. On the subject of content then, FPL Phillips, great channel, by the way, check him out as well. He says, how much FPL content do you consume game week to game week? And he says, do you like watching other content, or do you prefer to base decisions off your own eye test and statistical analysis? Go for it, Harry.
I watch and listen to an awful lot of FPL content, not massively for like decision making or wanting to hear like opinions, but because I enjoy it and I do it for like an entertainment point of view. So yeah, I'm not going to go through naming them because I will lose someone, and then yeah, don't want to miss out one of them. But I'm always in like live chats. I'm always watching streams, a lot of podcasts as well. So while I'm at my desk now, like often got something in my ears. Again, it's just something to have on in the background, a topic that I'm interested in, to hear different people's opinions and things like that. As I say, I rarely use it for actual decision making, but it's more just for entertainment. But I listen to a lot of it now.
How about yourself, Ross?
I'd say very, very similar. People probably don't realize, just a bit of insight into how long it takes to make a YouTube video, but it's many, many hours. And if we pretty much upload daily throughout the season, if not every couple of days. So we spend a hell of a lot of time sat at our desk making graphics, and for Oscar, not for me so much, but scripting videos. And so there's a lot of time where you're just sat there, and it's nice to have FPL on in the background, as Harry says, for like entertainment, but also sometimes a sense check. I remember there was a time I was in the middle of my graphics and I was watching the FPL Wire, and a player that I completely forgot had picked up an injury. They started speaking about the fact that he was injured, and I was about to talk about him in my video. So it's almost nice as well, just to make sure that you haven't missed anything key and you have that on in the background. But I would say that all three of us are relatively strong-minded in terms of we pick the people that we want to pick. And I don't think we're heavily influenced by content because we've got such strong opinions. That's what makes us content creators. So I don't think many of us will watch content to change our opinion, but it's more just, I mean, we love FPL. We wouldn't have started FPL channels if we didn't enjoy the game. So it's more for like a consumer perspective, I think.
Great answers. One final question then from Can You Hear the Drums? And he says to Harry, would you rather fight one Ross-sized chicken or 100 chicken-sized Rosses?
I mean, 100 is so many, and Ross isn't like that big, so I'd go for a Ross-sized chicken.
Right, let's move on. Let's go on to
Ross.
Ross's
We'll have words
Yeah.
after this, Harry. Jeez.
All right, let's do Ross's team then. So, Ross, your team is, you've got Miguel in goal. You've got big at the back. You've got Saliba, Vardy, and Trent. You've got Saka. How have you afforded this team? Saka, Palmer, Eze, Salah. Oh, Rogers. Okay, Isak and Wood.
Watkins.
No Watkins. And he's got Fabianski, Konsa, Barco, and Stewart. So, talk us through your team, Ross.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the goalkeeper. I really like Forest. I didn't realize Forest were fourth for expected goals conceded last season. That we are talking about after Liverpool, City, and Arsenal, the best defense in the league last season. And I think that's slightly overlooked. And I like Murillo as a centre back 4.5, but I also like a lot of the other defenders and the goalkeepers. I think a lot of them stink. I'm not really interested this season. So I look at that and I think if we can work out who starts for Forest, Miguel or Sells, it won't be Turner. I see lots of people asking Turner won't be starting, but out of those two, I'd love to have them because the fixtures are exceptional, not only for the first three, but across the first 10 game weeks, I'd argue they've probably got the best fixtures. So I really like the idea of a Forest keeper. Miguel has just been signed. He's apparently 6'8", and he's been signed to help them from set pieces. And I would just say if he's been signed specifically to help them with their set pieces, then it probably means that he's going to start because he's not going to help them from the bench. So yeah, I really like the idea of a Forest keeper. In terms of big at the back, the reason I've got big at the back is because I think there are a couple of cheap attackers that I actually want. It's not putting them in to enable big at the back. I'm putting them in there because I think they are good options. And inevitably that means I've got money left to then obviously be big at the back. So I spoke about Trent and Gvardiol already. I just think they're so good for what they're worth. Even if they were midfielders, like the attacking threat, especially Gvardiol at the back end of last season, they're great. So Trent and Gvardiol have been in almost every draft. I've then had Palmer and Salah and Isak in every single draft. Eze's been in most of them, which then leaves a few spots, basically Saliba, Saka, Rodgers, and Wood. And you could spread the funds a little bit more, right? So rather than Saliba, I could go a little bit cheaper. I could then go for Gordon rather than Saka. And then, yeah, you have the money to upgrade Rodgers and Wood. But I just look at Rodgers. He's been brilliant in pre-season. The quotes coming from Emery are just amazing. And I don't expect him to start every single game and play every single minute. But if he starts the first few, well, then we can pivot from there. So I like the idea of Rodgers at 5, not just because he's 5, but he just looks like a good option. And Wood scored 14 goals last season. He's already on 2 goals in pre-season. His minutes look very good. I know Awoniyi could start ahead of him, but Wood deserves to start. So I look at those two and they're so cheap that then enables me to have Saka and Saliba. And I think in a similar way to what you were saying with Harry's draft, what I've done here is I've built a team that I don't think needs many transfers. I've got double Liverpool. I've got double Arsenal. I've got double Villa, who from game week 3 onwards have a really nice set of fixtures. I've got Palmer, who I think a lot of people will end up scrambling to get. I mean, I'm very biased, but I think this is a 10 out of 10 draft like that. There's not much more to add. I think the only issue that I have with this draft, and it is a big issue, is there's no City attack. And I think if City start smashing in goals in the first few.
4-0 Ipswich game week 2.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
You gave Harry a 3 out of 10, so I don't know if he's going to give you a 10. Yeah, that's one of the differences between your two drafts. So Harry's got Foden and he's got Watkins, but you've got Saka and Palmer. So those are kind of two of the main differences.
Watkins, absolutely massive omission is Watkins as well. So, but I mean, you can't have everyone. As soon as you take one, you have to put in someone else. So, but I'm happy with the balance at the moment. I would just say I think there's a very strong chance I don't have Saliba. A lot of my drafts have had Gvardiol, Trent, and then someone like Mikalenko, or if Livramento looks nailed, great. And then that gives me 1.5 to do Rodgers to either Gibbs White or Rodgers to Bailey, or potentially Wood up to someone like Gakpo if he looks like he's going to start. So I've played around with dropping Saliba, but this is roughly what I've been on for a while now.
That was my only
thought.
Pedro.
Go on, Harry.
Yeah, well, exactly. Was to do Stewart to like Muniz at Fulham, and then he rotate with Rodgers and with Wood as a sort of front 8 and Saliba. Yeah. That's the thing. Like, I like the defenders, but I don't think you need 3 of them because there are such good 4.5s that if you have Saliba, Gvardiol, Trent, you're basically neglecting all those 4.5s who could. There are going to be good ones this season. So like I do Saliba to like Mikalenko and Stewart to Muniz at Fulham, and you can bench him game week 1 and rotate him well with Rodgers.
Yeah, I like the sound of that, and I might just steal that, but I'll pretend it was my idea.
Yeah, we do copy each other after all.
Yeah.
I guess
this is what Ross does. This is why Ross is just copying in action. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only concern would be Rodgers. Like if he ends up getting benched or something, then you just got Konsa off your bench. Like Barco, maybe if he actually ends up nailed until Estupiñán's back, then you've got great depth. But Stewart obviously not great. But yeah, I like it. Harry, out of 10?
2.
2 out of 10. All right. Well, we'll see what you've both got to say about mine. So, for the sake of some variety, I've got a Haaland draft. It is my latest draft, to be fair. Keen to get your thoughts. So I've got Miguel as well. I've got Anderson, Trent, Mikalenko. I've got Bruno. I've got Gordon, Eze, and Saka. And then a front 3 of Haaland, Wood, and Isak. So on the bench, it's Bentley, Konsa, Winks, and Greaves. So, what do you think, guys? Break my team.
You go, Ross. You go.
Yeah, I do really like it. I'm trying to find issues with it, and the only issue is there's no Salah, but then you have Haaland, and I think if you were to reverse, I think this is a great question. Answer it down below in the comments. If you reversed the opening two fixtures for Liverpool and City, so Liverpool had Ipswich in game week 2, and City had Ipswich in game week 1, but the rest of everything was the same. Haaland would have an extra like 30% ownership.
Yeah,
I genuinely think that. It's just you see that Chelsea and you're like, oh, I could go without him, but do realize he's got Ipswich at home in the second one, and then game weeks 3 and 4 he's got good fixtures too. So
yeah,
I am more and more on board with the idea of Haaland, but I'm still not quite on board with the idea of Salah and Haaland. I just think the draft is so unbalanced. I think you've got to just commit to one, and if you do commit to one, I mean, there's very little I'd argue that I don't like about this draft. I'd maybe like a £5 million defender in there, just to try and get you some extra points. I don't love the idea of having 2 4.5 starting every time. So I think if you could get Anderson to Munoz somehow, that would look so great. But obviously, then you'd probably have to lose. I mean, if Wood to João Pedro works, if he's fit, and then you've got obviously that little bit of money.
Yeah, that was it. So if I go Palmer, then I need the extra 0.5 on Saka. I think he's probably the main one I'm missing. But you didn't have me either, Harry, to be fair. But yeah, the problem with that is then I have to go Konsa down to a 4 mil defender, which is way too light for my bench. Personally, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty settled on both Isak and Gordon. Ross, you didn't have Gordon. Harry, you had both, I think. I mean, last season, Newcastle was second best for XG in home fixtures, and Southampton home game week 1. I mean, I can't see myself not going out with a double up there.
I just think 3 of the opening 5 are away was my concern. So like but the first one is such a good home fixture. Yeah. It does feel like the sort of thing you could go without and they could win 6-0. And you're like, ouch, that hurts. Even if he blanks in the away games. This is what happened with Gordon last season. He kept blanking in the away games, but he just did so well in the home games that it didn't matter. So that's what you're going with there. But if he does score 1 goal in the home game and continues to struggle in the away ones, I think you could probably go without. So I just wish he had penalties. If he had penalties, he's great. But I see like the likes of Gibbs White, the likes of Eze, and other players around that price point that have pens. I think I'd rather have a pen taker at that price.
Yeah, so on Eze then, one concern that you touched on earlier is Mateta's at the Olympics. So depending on how deep a run he goes in the Olympics, he could be back and miss game week 1. Maybe he will anyway. I don't know actually 100% on that. But yeah, if they're out Eliza, he's gone. But if they're out Mateta as well, then it's going to be a weakened Palace side offensively. So yeah, maybe that's enough to put me off Eze if that becomes the case. But yeah, for now he's in. I think he's great value for 7 mil.
Yeah, the final's on August the 9th. So I think it's exactly a week before their game week, or maybe 8 days before their game week 1 fixture. So that if they go deep in the tournament and Mateta starts every game, you've seen the Euros guys, they've been given a 2-week break. Yeah, you would probably expect him, if he makes the final and plays every game, to miss game week 1, unless he gets rotated, or unless, of course, France don't make the final, but their team does look very strong. So yeah, I think if Mateta's out for game week 1, that does pull into question, can you go with someone else in that Eze spot, even if it's someone like Gibbs White, just for the opening couple of fixtures and then switch to him after.
And the last thing is, I've got the armband on Isak. Do you agree with that? Or do you think if you've got Haaland, you have to captain him regardless of fixture?
You can't pick a £50 million asset and not captain. I'd be all over Haaland, personally.
I think it's close. What do you think, Harry?
I was going to say, I don't think you need to captain him. I think you need to captain him 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6 weeks. But when you have a fixture like Isak at home to Southampton, I don't mind that. I
saw you drew 2-2 with Wrexham yesterday, Chelsea as well. Who are like, what, League 2?
Yeah, it was like, hang on, we're not banking on pre-season fixtures where we've got like one first team player and the whole team changes at half time.
Still, surely a rotated Chelsea team, even with lots of players missing like Palmer, should be putting away a League 2 side.
City drew 2-2 with Celtic and Haaland only scored once against them and he's 15 million. So there's enough questions to be asked there.
Yeah, fine. All right. Very defensive about Chelsea. Anyway, I think we'll wrap up there. It's been an absolute pleasure, guys. Thank you for taking the time to come on the channel. As I said earlier, links to Harry's and Ross's channels are down below. And obviously go subscribe to FPL Therapy. Appreciate it, gents. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Welcome back for another video. I'm joined today by #1 template wanker and #1 that no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, slated. The thing is, you can't say that 30 seconds into the video because they will pick up
demonetize.
Yeah, no, that's not happening. Okay, here we go. Welcome back for another video. I'm delighted to be joined by two legends of FPL, Ross and Harry.
That's it's good.
No, let's start over. Let's start over.
Yeah,
Right,
I was going to say
you answer
if you...
first.
Okay.
I was fully expecting Ross to talk, given you Ross to.
Oh wow. Okay.
Oh, no,
Gonna start
I'm
like
losing
that.
it.
We're gonna start like that.
So, welcome, gents. How are we?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, mate. This was not a first draft. This was not a first. Wait, I thought I was going first. I thought Oscar was going to ask me.
Yeah.
Ross said he'll go first. I'll
Let's-
say
let's
welcome,
just-
gents, but Ross goes first.
All right,
Okay,
Ross, you
I'll
go
go
first.
Welcome back for another video. I'm delighted to be joined by two. I can't even take myself serious now with the welcome back for another video.
Yeah.
Welcome back for another video. I'm